Today I'm interviewing Jim Crinion, who was a member of the Royal Artillery during the Second World War, and he served in the Middle East, in the Far East, where he became a prisoner of war, and then he moved through Singapore to Japan. And I think you've heard enough of my introduction. I'd like to hear Jim's story in his own words. Jim, thank you very much for letting me do this interview today. And if you quickly run through where you were born, where you went to school, and what training you did in the United Kingdom.
Well, as you probably guessed, I'm British, but of Irish stock. But I was born in Ormskirk in Lancashire, and I went to school in Liverpool. During the time I was at school, I served with the Officers Training Corps as a youngster. I think I joined around about 16 years of age, and managed to progress through to get my Cert A, and then eventually to get matriculation. But whilst I was in the Officers Training Corps, I had a fair amount of experience, and I expected when I left the school that since the war had started in 1939, that perhaps I might get a commission this is a hopeful thing, a commission in the Home Guard when I joined the Home Guard. But unfortunately during that period of time, most of the officers were World War I, and the most I got was a strike. But at least I was able to do some training of the Home Guard volunteers, bringing them up to date from World War I to World War II. I didn't join the eventually I joined the Home Guard. That was what I refer to as the Dad's Army, because it's very similar to that of the film that was produced with Captain Mannering and a few of the shopkeepers and people like that, and it was typical of the activity of my men that I had with me to that of the film. But in serving, I had 2 or 3 incidences which made me think about my time in the Home Guard. I took a detachment down to the rifle butts for a bit of rifle training, and we were doing what they call street cleaning, walking up a street as a detachment, looking out for snipers and things of that nature. So when one of the targets came up on the butt, it was the duty of the man to, on the left or right, to take a pot shot at the target. When they first did the walk up the street, more or less, they were pretty slow, and I had to take them, haul them over the coals for it. And it says, smarten yourself up, and you have to be quick, you'd be dead if you weren't quick enough to hit the target as soon as it appeared. And they became very enthusiastic, and I said to the chap on my left, now you cover any target that comes up on the left, and those on the right, cover the right. And so we moved forward, in the middle of which, hitting a few targets and the rest of it, the chap on my left was rather enthusiastic, and he swung his rifle around at the same time as he pulled the trigger. The consequence was it took my forage hat off right through the badge. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I did when I went back to the drill hall, and people said you had a near do. I said yes, I probably would have had a lateral parting or something like that. I hadn't have been as fortunate as I was. anyway, I think the next occasion was when we went out. We had an area which we had to cover in the Home Guard regularly with detachments. One was a place called Hakodate In, which was a canal and a bridge. And this had concrete blocks to prevent tanks crossing. And I settled down for the evening for a quiet evening, but unfortunately the planes came over Liverpool and then went up towards Preston, which they usually do every night, and then return back home. And I think on this particular occasion, when they were coming back, one plane must have still had a load on, which he hadn't discharged, and tried to let it go there. And then at Hakodate, where we were, fortunately they weren't bombs, they were incendiary bombs. And they have a peculiar noise of whistling when they come down. And so I shot between two of the concrete blocks, and the men followed shortly afterwards. They were a little bit bored with what was happening. And the noise was getting louder, and one of these incendiary bombs dropped about 10 or 20 yards ahead of me. But by this time, the volunteers came in the place where I was and virtually pushed me forward, so that I was spread eagle on the road when the bomb dropped.
Now, Jim, could I hold you there?
Yes.
Because I feel it's more important to get on to what you experienced in Java.
Right.
So if you'd like to wet your whistle, could we move forward now to your movement from the United Kingdom to Java, and tell us what your rank was? Had you been commissioned at this stage? And do you remember the name of the ship you went to Java on?
Well, I left UK from Glasgow on convoy WS-14 on the Empress of Australia. We left at night. We headed down the west coast of the UK and across the Bay of Biscay towards Gibraltar. We thought we were going to Basra in the Middle East, which we were destined, but in actual fact we received orders to go to the Far East. We headed down to Cape Town, and from Cape Town we headed to, we thought, Singapore, but it turned out Singapore was near falling, and we were diverted to Batavia.
Now, what month was it? Do you know the date that you arrived in Batavia?
It would have been the beginning of January.
January 1942.
42.
Mm-hmm. And the other question was, what is your rank at this stage?
Rank, I was still a bombardier.
Yes, okay.
A lance bombardier, I should say.
So you arrive in Batavia. Do you have any comments about your observations of the preparedness for defence of Java by the Dutch or those British who were there?
Everything seemed normal. There didn't seem to be any fortification. I didn't see any Dutch soldiers or anything like that, or anything. There were a lot of ships in the harbour. Apart from that, everything was quiet, because the first night we arrived and the second night we were allowed out to have leave. Took our turn up in the town to go and get some nasi goreng and things of that nature. But it wasn't until probably 2 days later, I think, we then had orders to disperse, and the 69th battery, to which I belong, we were given duty at an aerodrome adjacent to Batavia. I don't think it had a name as far as we know at the time. The rest of the battery were posted at other aerodromes a little further west, further east than Java.
Do you consider that you were well prepared to man your guns and carry out anti-aircraft defence or fire?
We were. We eventually got them off the ship, but when we had the first initiation into action was when the Zeros came over and bombed the ships in Tanjung Priok, in which we were based. The Exeter, I think it was the ship at the time, retaliated. The heavy artillery units and the light attack units had not got all the equipment off the ship, so we were virtually defenceless. But it was a very quick raid and it disappeared fairly soon. So we were actually able to revert back to normal.
So would that have been in the second half of February after Singapore had fallen, do you think?
It would have been during February, yes.
Yes, yeah. So you've got the Air Force contact from the Japanese. Did you see the Japanese Navy at any time?
No.
No? When did you see the first time you saw Japanese ground troops?
Well, that's a long way on.
Is it? Yep, okay.
Before that we were in action. You asked previously about changes in rank and these sorts of things.
Yes, yes please.
We took up duty on the airport, and shortly after we'd been engaged in action against the Japanese, I was called up to headquarters and I found myself with 3 other non-commissioned officers, and we were informed that we were now lieutenants, and I was a junior lieutenant and I took D company. I was given D company. The others took the other company. But and returned to where we were to receive our orders. Shortly afterwards, I was detailed to take a detachment down the island to a place, Jakarta, not the city, a small little town on a crossroads, and join the captain, who I didn't know anything about from the heavy artillery, to do a rearguard action for the troops that were down in Surabaya, and were possibly coming through, Air Force people were coming through north to join the meeting place in Bandung. But we had orders to, 2 days later we had orders to return to our battery headquarters, and we never saw any troops, never saw any Japanese troops at all. Never saw any Air Force or any action whatsoever. And we retired back to headquarters, and I was blithely told that I was now a prisoner of war. I hadn't seen any Japanese whatsoever.
So this must have been, you must have been into March 1942 now. Would that be right?
Would have been end of February, beginning of, because we were about 2 weeks on the road waiting for the Japanese. So it would have been around the beginning of March, yes. I didn't keep a diary. I never had any paper and pencil. I didn't bother about dates or anything of that nature.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I've never remembered it.
So when you really had contact with the Japanese, were they brutal towards you prisoners of war? Or?
No, no. The first appearance of the Japanese was when a Japanese officer, I've forgotten what his rank was, came with 2 outsiders with fixed bayonets and told us we had to march to Batavia. And I think the brigadier he was, I think it might have, it was certainly wasn't Brigadier Sitwell who was the one that came out on the ship with me, with Wavell, but I can't remember at this stage. But we said we couldn't, we had too many that were sick, and They said, you march, be ready to start tomorrow. And sure enough,